Okay, hi everyone. I've gotten a lot of requests for how to make my paracord slings, and I am trying to sell them on Etsy, but I have a day job and I can't keep up with the demand. I'm out of stock again. And really, I don't want to be a gatekeeper on this, and I don't have many plans to expand my so-called operation. So I thought I would, as I'm making another batch here, I thought I would show you how I do it. So if you want, you can make your own. So these are the things that you're going to need. I've got an example of one of my slings here in the orange, and you'll need paracord, of course, and some artificial sinew, and some spring clamps, a sharp knife, good pair of scissors, some lighters of your choice, super glue, and a tennis ball. The super glue, I'm going with the thicker stuff. This is a gel type. I've had success with like a medium thickness CA glue, but if you get the normal stuff, it's really runny and liquidy, and it'll just get all over the place. So you definitely need something that has some viscosity so it's not going to run and drip everywhere. Because the super glue, it's really just for a few targeted points in the sling, and if you get it everywhere, it'll just kind of mess up the paracord. So these are what you need. For the artificial sinew, that's for the whip cracker. You can also use a lot of other things like mason's twine, basic nylon twine, and like jute. Or if you want to be really frugal, you can use the inner strands of paracord to make the cracker. It's just not quite as durable, I've found, as the artificial sinew. For the paracord, get good stuff. Get real paracord. Stuff you'll find at a army surplus store. I get mine at Smith & Edwards now. Don't go to the big box stores, because that stuff's really cheap, low quality paracord, and it'll just disintegrate on you when you start slinging. Alright, bear with me here, but I'm going to start out on the floor, and then I'll move to a better work position here. So for the sake of contrast and good illustration, I'm going to use a 3-color sling. That way you have a good visual on what's going on. And I just start out by measuring about 2.5 fathoms of cord. That's 2.5 arm spans. So here I've got this color blue. There's 1 arm span, 2 arm spans and a half. Now, I'll seal the ends of this later. So these two are going to be the main colors of the sling. We'll have 4 strands here, doubled up. These will be the finger loops. And then this will be kind of our single highlight strand. Because I make a 5-strand braid. So with this single strand, you don't need 2.5 fathoms. You only need like 1 and maybe a half. And you'll need a little bit more later, but we'll get to that as we go, I think. And these are going to be the finger loops. Got the middle of them here. Pick which one you want to be left and right. and just sort of hold the loops there, and I tie a constrictor knot. You make an X. Maybe I should get closer here. Go over and I make my X. Then I make sure to come over the original strand. And then I stab it through the X. And pull that nice and tight. Not too tight yet. Slide it up. Get your loops to kind of an equal size. This will be the knot you use to adjust your finger loop size. So it'll slide up and down. So when it's open, I want my loops about that big. Now I'm going to pinch this a little bit just to help hold it. And then I'll come in with another constrictor knot using the longer side of the strand. There's my X. Then I go through. And I don't want to leave too much slack between these two knots here. So I'm trying to work it all out the free end. But I do want some slack. In fact, maybe a little bit more than that. So now you should have your loops and 2 constrictor knots. Make sure there's still equal spacing, that when you slide it down there's enough slack here. And pinch that again. Now we're ready to start braiding. At this point I think I'm going to try to move to my new setup here. Okay, I've moved locations here. I'm just in an unfinished room. Here's a stud in a wall. Just got 2 screws in it. And I've looped my loops around the screws. I've got the X's of the constrictor knots facing the wall. Now I'm going to start the braid. So to keep things interesting, I like to do a little finagling here to get the colors going right. Because if you just start braiding here, let's see. You'll notice the 2 light blue strands are touching each other. I like to have them so that they're crossing like these 2 dark blue strands. It makes the color pattern more interesting. With a 5-strand braid, you do 2 strands on one side, 3 on the other, and then you just start passing them over. So here that's wrong because my 2 same color strands are touching. So what can I do? What if I pass that one there? Here we go. I got it. So now I've got it started so that as I move along in the braid, none of the same color strands end up next to each other. There's silver, dark blue, light blue. Every couple passes, just make sure to untangle your free ends or you'll end up with a mess. So I start out a little bit soft and then I start getting into I start pulling it really tight here. So here's my next strand, pass it over, give it a little pull. Pass it over, give it a little pull. You just want to be consistent with how tightly you're pulling it. Because if you vary, then it'll end up kind of lumpy. I'm just going to work my way down here. Going to take a second. This is what I use the spring clamps for, is just to clamp off one side of the braid, hold my progress. I'll test this out. So there you go. So you want those X's to be facing the outside of the back of your hand. X is out. And then your braiding starts on the inside and the V's cross down. Now I'm going to braid about 2 feet of this and come back. If you ever catch that you've made a mistake in the braid, take the time to go back and fix it. I always have this urge to rush to finish it, but you really need to, it's worth doing it right. Okay, I've moved my setup up a little higher. I've screwed a spring clamp into the wall here. Just to help me hold that up higher. And I'm to the point now where I want to start looking at the pouch. I've been judging this just based on having an existing sling, but this distance here from the loops to right now, you want it to be about from inside of your thumb to your armpit. So I've got about 24 inches there. That's about where we're at here. And I'm going to start, this is a 5 braid sling, so I'm going to start with the single color. I've got a new strand now of that single color silver. You know, maybe 18, 24 inches long. I'm just going to place it next to the existing one. So now I've placed that strand in. I'm just going to resume braiding. Once you get a couple tucks, you should have it pretty well captured. Now I'm going to braid this as if it was one unit. like to go at least an inch or so. Now I'm going to split the strands just so that the same amount of colors on each side. So instead of passing the whole thing over, I'm just going to pass one. Now I've got 3 and 3. This is going to be the start of my pouch. Pin that off for now. Okay, so for the pouch, we're going to increase the size of each side back up to 5 strands. So I've got 2 more strands here. One dark blue, one light blue. These are the main colors of the sling. They're, about a fathom, a little less. This light blue one I'm cut probably a little too short, we'll see. So, and then I sort of off-center them a bit so that one side's longer than the other, and kind of stagger them to how I want them to be. So it ends 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of in a stagger. Then I'll hold that where I want it and place it in here. And I usually place it just one strand above the bottom. And then I'll just clamp it on the one side. And then start working one half of the pouch at a time. So start from the topmost strand, bring it down. So one of the strands that you braid in is going to be split into the bottom half. So bring the top into the middle, then that up, down, up, down, up, down. This is probably the trickiest part of the whole build. I'll show you the other side too. So the real key here is this strand here that kind of wants to kink. Got to pull it really tight. It's the strand that was part of the existing braid that's just underneath the 2 you inserted. That one wants to be really tight. You play with the tension of the various strands just to get this to lay flat. And then I go down about 7 or 8. So that one we had to pull really tight is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 strands. And what I've got is, this will be the X in the middle of the pouch. I've got just another piece here. And what you do with this is you actually want to take the core out. There we go. So now it's just a hollow shell. And then I do a little overhand knot in here. I actually want to stab the overhand knot down into the braid. And then capture it. I like to just get that up out of the way for a second. So the terminating end is on the other side of the braid. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now we're ready to stab that back in. Okay. Lock that off. So now we have what's going to be our X coming off here. I'll go over Back up here and I'll start my other side. So the silver is the strand we passed over, and then here's the two we're putting in. And we want the silver underneath these two. And then I'm going to split it into my 2 and my 3. Bring this one down. And then the silver will come up. And then down. And it's the silver that's going to be really important to tighten here. So now we braided down our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 passes here. So this dark blue one is the one that's going to capture my net. I'm actually going to twist it to make that X. And then I'm going to pull these 3 up and start braiding. Okay. Now I've gone my 7 or 8 passes again. I'm going to just bring this back up through the braid. There we go. Get it out of the way. There we go. I'm just going to pull these 2 strands tight to make our X there. And I want the 2 sides of the pouch to be the same length. See, it's pretty tricky because if you let go of it, you're going to lose a braid or 2 and you have to kind of rework it. So I've got my 2 sides of the pouch the same length, and each side has 3 strands on the outside and 2 on the inside. Here's my 3. I'm going to just take one from the left and cross it behind. Line it up with this bottom one. Then one from the right, cross it behind. Line it up with this guy. And then the 2 strands left in the middle form their own strand. I'm just pairing them up to make a new 5-strand braid with 2 cords in each strand. And in this case, I think I'm going to start from the right with my braid. So pass it down, pass it down, pass it down. Now I'm just braiding a 5-strand braid, but with 2 strands in each, 2 cords in each strand. And I'll just do a couple passes there and lock that off. And then if you look at it from the back side, you should kind of have an X here. And from the front side, it should be pretty nice and flat. Flat to flat. You know, no twists developing. So at this point, you could just keep braiding as a 5-strand, but I like to migrate over to like a 10-strand braid. So instead of passing the pairs, I'm just going to pass one. And all you do is just pass the top one over. So here I've got 5 on this side, 5 on this side. Pass it. Now I have 6 on this side, 4 on this side. Pass it. This is definitely tricky. Just takes practice. So now that I'm inch or two from the join of the pouch. I'm just going to decide which ones I want to start taking out of the braid first. In this case, it's going to go by strand length. So here, this strand's pretty short. He's going to have to come out soon. So I'll just pass him over. Continue braiding like normal. Except when I get to him next, I'm just not going to pass him. So here he is, and just leave it be up there. And keep going without him. I gotta take a break, my fingers hurt. And as I go along here, every, 2 inches maybe, I'm just going to get rid of another strand. So here's this guy, and I'm just going to not braid him in. I've got a fan going now. That's just to blow on my hands to keep them dry. Because while you're doing this, if your hands start getting sweaty, that's when you're going to get blisters. Okay, I think I'm going to get rid of this next. When I get rid of a strand, I just make sure that my braid is continuing symmetrically. So here I'm 4 and 3. So if I was to leave out this one per se, then I'd be 4 and 2, which is not really good. Now I'm down to a 6-strand braid. The goal is just to get back down to a 5-strand braid at about halfway down the strand. So here, I want to get rid of this guy, but you can see if I left him out now, my next pass would be this one down, and the braid would be asymmetrical. So I'm going to keep going with him until he pops up on the other side. And now I can leave him out, because the next pass is this one, and now my braids are correct 3 and 2. So I'm going to continue with 5-strand for a while, and then I'll actually taper it down to 3 strands. So now I'm going with 4-strand. When you do 4-strand, it's 2 and 2, and then it's 3 and 1. And that 1 strand needs to be pulled pretty tight. I'll get a little extra on it by looping it around some fingers. At this point I'm going to take it out just to match it up a little bit and see how my taper's doing. So I should keep going. Now I think I'm going to go down to 3 strand here. So I'm just going to leave him out. Okay, I think I'm going to try to finish this here. See if it's the right length. So this strand's going to be my knot. And I'm just going to go around the back and back down to make an overhand. And then pull it super tight. So the test to see if you've made it the right length is to put a ball in the pouch and then grab the knot and see how well it hangs. So it's pretty symmetrical there, and then if I tilt my wrist, it's off center, tilt my wrist, it's off center. This one's pretty good, I'm pretty happy with it. But say if you did it like that, you can tell that it's this release cord's not long enough, you know. Or if you held it like this, you could tell the release cord's too long. But that's about right. So now I'm going to move into cleaning up the sling. This will start with the pouch here. You want to make sure you have your knee facing up. These are the 2 strands you added. And then your X is going to have the stopper knots on the back side. And I'm just going to try to untwist this, neaten it out a little bit. So that's a little better. Let's see how the ball fits in there. That's pretty good, so I'm going to redo my overhand knot here, my stopper knot. And there's your X. This X just helps keep the ball from slipping through the pouch when you're slinging. And I totally stole this idea from Channing at Practical Paracord. So if you want some slings that are in stock, go buy from Channing. He's got some great stuff. So now what I'm going to do is just cut off all the loose strands and burn the ends. And whenever you got a knot, make sure you leave a nice chunk outside of the knot, like 3/4 of an inch, you know. If you cut it too close, it can come undone. There we go. I like to try to hold the paracord in the blue part of the flame. I think I lied there. I'm going to try to trim that a little bit closer. You can get it a little closer by kind of pulling it out in the braid. Just make sure you don't burn the strands of the real braid while you're doing this. So here's an example here. I'm going to take this, I'm going to pull on it till I've got kind of a crease in the braid. And then I'll cut it maybe a 1/2 inch there, burn it. And then when I unfold the braid, it'll suck back in a little bit. So I could have trimmed that one a little bit closer. I'll try to do the next one a bit closer. Maybe a 1/4 inch. You can tell it's been a month or so or more since I've made some of these. There we go. There we go. That'll work its way back in eventually. So when I get to the end here, I'm going to stagger these strands. I'll cut one at maybe 2 fingers length. You know, 2 fingers. And burn that. These end ones are important to burn really well. Then I'll do this other one, maybe at 3 fingers. And the one that tied the knot, I'll leave it the longest. Okay, so now we can move on to super glue. So for super glue here, I just have some Loctite Ultra Gel, and I'm going to put a dot right in the middle of each of these X's. I think we'll go straight down to the end knot. I'm going to flip it on the back side of that knot, open it up a little bit, put a lot of super glue in there. That's a little too much probably. And I'll let that dry. Okay. Now we're going to make the whip cracker. So I've got my artificial sinew here. Okay, so I've just cut a segment that's about as long as my thumb to pinky, my palm spread, and it's doubled around. When in doubt, you can cut it pretty long. Gonna make another one of these. And put them together. Now I'm gonna cut one that's just, one length, and put him in the mix, but kind of stagger him a little bit. This artificial sinew is nice because it's waxed, so it kind of sticks together. Now I'm going to start just twist braiding it around a pencil hair, just like a Flemish twist. So you go twist, twist, trade, twist, twist, trade. And if you twist away from you, you trade towards you. Now I'm not going to go very far before I start getting rid of strands here. So there I've gotten rid of one strand. Now I think I'll get rid of this other one. So I'm twisting 2 and 2 now. Oops. I'm going to go about that far. And then I'll just take one of these and do an overhand knot. Pass it around the strand and then back out. Pull it tight. Now I'm going to go about 3 fingers and then snip this all off nice and clean. And I kind of open up these strands and fluff them out. There we go. Kind of fluffed out there. Now you just got to cut these ends and you've got yourself a whip cracker. So to attach the cracker to the sling, I take the longest strand of the sling here, and there's this little loop. Put it over there, and then I twist it in the direction that tightens it until it kinks around. Do that again. So I'm twisting it this way, and then I do my overhand. Just pass it up and under. And pull that nice and tight. Then kind of scoot it down towards the knot. There we go. There you go. So now at this point, if you've braided tightly, the sling should be pretty firm. Like you see, it doesn't just droop to the ground. It's got a little bit of a reach to it. Like, look at that. Now, a normal strand of paracord, here's just a strand, and then here's the sling. So this is good and bad. It's good, it means you got a tight weave, but for slinging you actually want to soften it up a bit. So at this point I actually just grab a rubber mallet and get on a hard floor. Here I'm in a basement, so I'm on concrete, and I'm just gonna soften it up a bit. Especially around the knee area. So now if I go to hold it out, well, it's still pretty stiff, but it's better. The other thing I need to do at this point is stretch it. So I like to go outside and hook it on a fence post and yank on it as hard as I can. And then I'll also take, if you've got a basketball hoop outside, you can just loop it around the hoop and kind of pull it back and forth. It'll also break in with use. But basically at this point your sling's done. You just want to make sure that your super glue didn't tie your adjustable knot down. You still want to be able to slide that. There you go. And then when you put it on, the knots here and the knee should be up. So there you go. Alright, it's dark and cold and gloomy out here. This is an awful idea, but I can't end a video like this without at least throwing a tennis ball from the new Slings. So maybe I can get some light on this. Here you can, this is the sling that we made. Triple blue. I don't know if you can see any of this. Yeah, there you go. Yep. Hopefully. Yeah. Woo. Okay. I hope you got that. You can hear the whip. I'll go pick up those tennis balls and spring.